Hey guys, Carlo Filippo in here, your muscle chef, ready to talk to you about this guy, the chicken pound. What do we do with the chicken pound? We prepare grilled chicken in different flavors, 6 to be exact. If you're serious about bodybuilding and you meal prep, don't go anywhere else. This is the company for you.
RX Television on RxMuscle.com. This is Ask Dave, better known as hashtag Ask Dave, your 30-minute question and answer show with Dave Palumbo. All your questions on diet, training, supplementation, IFBB pros, competitions. And speaking of competitions, we have a doozy planned for the Arnold Classic. The lineup has been released. Dave Palumbo and Sean Ray just did a reaction video. That video is live right now at RxMuscle.com and the RxMuscle YouTube channel. Dave, all sorts of chatter, all sorts of talk about this being potentially the deepest Arnold Classic lineup ever.
Yeah, I mean, if Sean Roden was there, it would have been the Olympia. You know, it's great. I mean, Ramy and Dexter and Bonac and Rulli and Patrick Moore and Cedric. I mean, Steve Kuklo, Akeem. I mean, on paper, it could be the best Arnold Classic yet. I mean, ever maybe. So in that sense,
Dave, let me ask you, because also on the list was Johnny O. Jackson. He retired, correct?
Yeah, I guess he's decided he wanted to compete again. I don't know, but I always say bodybuilders should never announce their retirement because they never really retire. They kind of just take long periods off. I see guys that are retired for 20 years who come back. So if you retire, you're not allowed to come out, or you can't come back. So just say I'm taking a little break. That's all. No more retirement announcements anymore. Dexter's the most honest one out there. He's like, I'm never retiring. So he's pretty smart. Actually, I enjoyed talking to Sean because I had seen he'd gone to Egypt, and I wanted to see how it was going to see the Egyptian pyramids. So we talk a little bit about that too. His crazy world tour he went on. So that should be up at RxMuscle.com right now. Also, I wanted to make an announcement, Sid. We have a ProtoLyze vanilla pudding back in stock, and I got to tell you, I've been using the vanilla ProtoLyze, except I haven't been making it like pudding. You can mix it with 2 ounces of water and make a pudding out of it instantly. I've been mixing it with about 8 ounces of water and making a thick shake out of it, and I've been doing it before bed because I've been training late at night. You know, I got into this. I've been 11 o'clock, 11:30 at night. That's the only time I've been working out in my house, and then I've been drinking a ProtoLyze shake with my FiberLyze and like a couple of pieces of fruit, like some watermelon and stuff like that. And I'm telling you, I'm going to bed, I'm waking up, my fasting blood sugars in the morning are down. They're like 80 or below, which I've never had them that low. I'm convinced it's from the time-released protein source that we have, a mixture we have in ProtoLyze, which is a casein whey isolate blend. And I have some theories that when you combine that with a good fiber source like FiberLyze, it will suppress the liver production of glucose. As we all know, the liver cranks glucose out before we wake up, and a lot of times guys are waking up with high fasting blood sugars, and that's not good, obviously, long-term for blood sugar and glucose control, which could lead to type 2 diabetes, so we don't want that. So I have found if you guys are running high morning blood sugars, make sure you take FiberLyze before bed. A lot of you already do that, but add in a scoop or even maybe more, depending on how big you are, of ProtoLyze. And once again, my favorite flavor is the vanilla. We have vanilla and chocolate. The vanilla is outrageous, and I just got it back. We hadn't had it for about a year or two, and we decided to bring it back because I actually wanted it. I had a few people who were driving me crazy too who loved it. Mix it like a shake if you want, or like a pudding. And I'm telling you, email me, let me know. I promise you, your fasting blood sugars will be lower.
So again, vanilla ProtoLyze back in stock at speciesnutrition.com. And then, of course, that video with Dave Palumbo and Sean Ray breaking down the 2019 final Arnold Classic list at RxMuscle.com. Let's go to the questions. The first 2 questions from the Dave Palumbo Experience app. The first question, Dave, do you suggest LIPOLYZE off-season? I heard you say it in your last video you take it daily.
I take it for like life extension purposes. Number one, it has R-lipoic acid, and, excuse me, R-lipoic acid and acetyl L-carnitine. Those 2 ingredients have been shown to help the mitochondria of our cells effectively work more efficiently. Okay, it's not like the other supplement that I mentioned a couple of days ago. If you watched my rant, or supplement science video I did on PQQ, which helps produce new mitochondria. But these two supplements regenerate or actually make the mitochondria you have work better. So we all know that as the mitochondria age, that's what can lead to the aging process. So I use it for that purpose. But it also resensitizes your body to leptin. So you might have enough leptin, and leptin is the hormone that your brain releases that tells your body it's not hungry. But most of us have plenty of leptin, we just don't have leptin receptors, so it doesn't work well. So you're dieting, or you're not dieting, you're always hungry, and you can't stop yourself from eating. Suppressing your appetite is not the solution. We have natural appetite suppressants in our body, they're called leptins. LIPOLYZE has an ingredient in there, African mango, that increases leptin receptors so that you respond to your leptin and it will shut down that hunger or that feeding response in your brain, so you'll be able to eat more sensibly. So I take it for those two purposes. I take it at night so that I'm not hungry overnight, because I'm into longevity now. I don't want to be overeating. But I'll tell you what, I don't overeat anyway. I'm not really one of those people. But I don't know, maybe because I have normal leptin sensitivity. I believe that a lot of people that are overly voraciously hungry all the time, and especially in overweight people have the highest levels of leptin in their body, but they don't respond to it because they don't have enough leptin receptors. You restore leptin sensitivity to them, and they lose a ton of weight. Because they don't want to no one wants to eat that much food. You think people want to stay up eating bags and bags of potato chips? No, they do it because they're starving. I don't know why. There's something wrong with that leptin and leptin sensitivity system in their body. Try LIPOLYZE, I'm telling you. Even one pill just 3 times a day, you'll restore leptin sensitivity.
Second question again from the Dave Palumbo Experience app. Dave, thank you for the success I had with your low-carb diet this contest season. I won my class thanks to your diet. Now that I'm off season, I'm adding 30 grams carbs per meal to the pre-contest diet. What carb source do you suggest I add to ISOLYZE peanut butter meals?
You could put, grape juice in there if you wanted to. I mean, I tell people to do that post-workout if you don't want to. You could put like CARBOLYZE, which is my high molecular weight carbohydrate, in there. You could throw a banana in there if you really want to. Some people will make a side of rice with it. I mean, there's a lot of different things you can do. As far as, convenience goes, I was always a guy that liked powders, So I had, back in the day before they made high molecular weight, carb powders, I used to use Ultra Fuel, the powdered Ultra Fuel. And I would put a scoop of that in there, and then I would put my Metrix packet in. That's what I did back in the early 90s. Nowadays, we have sophisticated whey isolates. I use my ISOLYZE and I use my CARBOLYZE. Those are the two. And if I feel that I'm absorbing it a little too quickly and I'm getting low blood sugars because it's getting rapidly absorbed, I'll throw a tablespoon of macadamia nut oil in there to slow it down a little bit. So, that's easy enough, Most people like to eat carbs. So if you're only eating 3 carb meals a day, you might want, if you're only doing 3 servings of carbs a day, you might want to do them in food, and keep the shakes carb-free. It's up to you. There's no rules, really.
Let's go to our Instagram questions. Again, if you're not following us, our handle is official_RxMuscle. Let's go to Jay Macon. He has a couple of different questions about the Arnold Classic. Of course, you and Sean Ray just did the video. But he wants to know in particular, who are you most looking forward to seeing up on that Arnold Classic stage?
I'm interested to see, and we talk about this, Sean and I, quite a bit in the video, how Patrick Moore does. Because I think Patrick was overlooked at the Olympia. I think he was way lower than he should have been. I thought he should have been top 6. I think that he's going to make improvements between the Olympia now and the Arnold Classic. And I think that we're going to see someone who could be very dangerous in the future. So I would like to see if he can make the top 5, maybe the top 3 here. If he does, this is an Olympia lineup. This is basically better than the Olympia lineup that he faced, over there in Vegas. And he should have definitely been higher in that lineup. Now, if he beats some of these Olympia guys in this lineup, that's going to raise his stock way, way, way high. And I think the judges are now looking for him because everyone knows he was kind of overlooked a little bit. So I'm excited to see him. Of course, I'm excited to see Big Ramy back on stage because I think he's got the most wow factor of anybody up there. I think that Rulli, is going to be a hit or miss. He's either going to be great or he's going to be terrible because he might be a little burnt out. But I don't think, I think he might be good because I don't think he ever hit his peak last year. And when you don't hit your peak, it doesn't take as much out of you. So he could be good. But I would say Ramy and Patrick Moore.
Let's go to Soma Defesh. What does it take to maintain gains once off? I'm training full body twice a week and taking a low HRT dose. I seem to be maintaining so far, but it's only been 6 weeks of this lower training volume and lower dosage.
First of all, when I go off, I go off. I mean, this guy's going on hormone replacement. If you can't maintain muscle on HRT levels, then you're not eating right or you're not training right. I personally would not train each body part twice a day. I think that's overtraining. That's just me, especially while you're off cycle. I wouldn't do it even on cycle, but so to me, I think you're overtraining. Okay, I don't think anyone should train more than 5 days a week with weights. Always taking 2 days a week off, whether you're dieting for show or you're not. Now you can do cardio every day, but I certainly wouldn't do weights every single day. So those are the two things that I would like to see you change a little bit. If you're going to go off, like I said, it's only 6 to 8 weeks. Clean out. Let your receptors recover. And then go back on. HRT is great. I'll tell you why people should go on HRT after a cycle. Let's say you're on HRT most of the year. And you decide, you know what? I'm going to take 10 weeks out of every year or 12 weeks out of every year where I'm going to do a cycle. Okay? And after the cycle, you go back to HRT. That's fine because you're going to be off the rest of the year. But if you're a guy who's going to be cycling on and off all year, when you go off, you should be on nothing, okay? You're only going to be off 6 weeks, 8 weeks the most. You're not going to crash from that. So I think that's a mistake that people make. They try to stay on. Don't worry, you're not losing that much. If you lose a couple pounds, it'll come back in the first 2 weeks that you go back on cycle. I promise you.
Let's go to Marky Mars. What's the point of taking Nolvadex all the time during a cycle? You said you used to do it. Why is that?
We did it because we didn't want to get gynecomastia. Once I had my gyno taken out, I never took a Nolvadex again. And once I found out that Nolvadex inhibits IGF-1 production, I certainly never took it again. And then when Arimidex came out, I always would do a little bit of Arimidex, a half a milligram every other day, just to keep my estrogen in check. But most guys are nuts with the anti-estrogens because they have gyno. Once it's removed and you don't see it anymore, you don't quite care quite so much about taking anti-estrogens. Now, if you were to go and get blood work and your estrogen levels through the roof, you should be on an anti-estrogen. If it's not, and it's not quite that high, then maybe you shouldn't be on any anti-estrogen. If anything, estrogen sensitizes the androgen receptors, so you need some available.
Let's go to Joao TBE, and he typed this in all caps for some reason. Dave once said this. I'm going to do that. Dave once said that small dosages of test, if used in certain times during the day, won't suppress natural testosterone production. Do you still believe that?
I don't know why. If you're going on a cycle, if you're taking testosterone, what are you worried about? Who cares if you suppress your own natural production? It doesn't matter. Your own natural production is insignificant compared to what you're injecting into yourself. If you're taking at least 200 milligrams a week, whether you're taking it 25 milligrams every other day or however you're portioning it out, you're going to shut down your own testosterone production. And even if you didn't, it wouldn't matter. You're not producing that much naturally that it would even make a significant impact over what you're injecting into yourself. So if let's say you're injecting 400 milligrams a week of testosterone into yourself, because if you're not doing at least that, you're wasting your time. You're going to shut down natural production anyway because it's the estrogen that shuts down the production. Okay, so, I think people they're going to rediscover something that they haven't done before. Back when I first started, taking anabolics, the guy who was suggesting to, who was giving me advice said, he only takes stuff that doesn't aromatize. But, when we took, drugs like Anavar back then or drugs like Primabol and Winchell, we used such small amounts, they didn't aromatize. It's a dose-dependent thing. I think in high amounts, some of these drugs can aromatize, or at least they can suppress testosterone, production naturally. So, I think don't worry about what you're naturally producing. Once you decide to go on a cycle, assume you're not producing anything anymore naturally, and when the cycle's over, you'll turn yourself back on.
Let's go to T. Mutri. How long do you recommend running HCG, HMG, and Clomid to see elevated levels?
I'm assuming you're doing it to get someone pregnant. That's the baby-making protocol, the Clomid, HCG, and HMG. I just tell people stay on it till they're pregnant, till the girl is pregnant. For different people, it's going to take different amounts of time. Some people, it's going to happen quickly. Some people, it's not. The people it happens quickly for are the people who probably have some sperm production already, who just haven't, for one reason or another, just didn't have it quite enough. And that kind of the HMG and HCG kind of push them over the threshold. For the people that it might take longer, they probably have zero sperm, because they've been on cycles and they've been on HRT, and they're so suppressed that it's going to take them a couple months to turn themselves back on. Those guys, it might take a little longer. So the only way to really know what sperm production is to go get your sperm tested. This is a funny story. I had a guy who wanted to get his sperm tested, and I said, "Oh, did you go get it tested?" He goes, "Oh, it was such a pain in the ass." I said, "Why?" He's like, "Well, I didn't want to do it at the clinic, so I had to go home." And I did it at home because you got to create a sample of it. You know how you do that, And but then you have like 45 minutes to get it back to them so that they can process it. So this guy was driving like 100 miles an hour because he lived like an hour away from the place. I'm like, what the freak were you thinking? You should have gone in the bushes someplace or something like that. I don't understand it, But the only way to really see what your sperm production is or what your numbers are and the motility of the sperm is to get tested. I didn't want to be bothered with that. I knew the stuff. I knew the protocol would work. I just had to be patient with it, or my wife had to be patient with it. I was plenty patient, but it gets frustrating after a while if it takes a while. But you believe me, you will get her pregnant.
Let's go to Calvin KX. Is KLEN so anti-catabolic that you can get away with doing 1 to 2 hours of fasted cardio a day without losing little to any amount of your muscle mass?
Well, if you're doing the right kind of fasted cardio, you're not going to lose any muscle mass anyway. So, clenbuterol is irrelevant. I mean, if you're on any anabolics, you're not going to lose any muscle. But if you're doing high-intensity cardio, it doesn't matter. You could be on a million drugs. You can still lose muscle if you have low glycogen in the muscle. And if you're eating carbs just so you can do cardio, so you won't lose muscle, then you're defeating the whole purpose of cardio. Cardio is supposed to be done in an empty state, and it's supposed to mobilize fat from the fat cells to produce energy. That means you have to do your cardio at a moderate rate. If you go too high intensity, your body can't generate ATP quick enough from fatty acid oxidation or fat burning. It has to use carbohydrates as a fuel source, which is not what we want, obviously. When we're doing cardio, we want to burn body fat.
Let's go to UC Summa. Seems like a simple, straightforward question, but if you want to maybe elaborate on how you did this, did you train abs during the off season?
Always. I always train abs. I still train abs. Like 4 times a week. I never used weight on my abs. I always trained them. Why? Because I want to be able to control my abs on stage. I think I went through like maybe a month or two I wasn't training abs because everyone said, "Oh, your abs will get nice. Your waist will get smaller if you don't train them." All my waist did was balloon out more because I couldn't control my abs. Okay, so train your abs. I usually do it at the end of the workout. And if you do them like almost every day, you don't need to do a lot. I'll do like a set of crunches, 75 to 100 reps. And then I'll do maybe a set of leg lifts, like 6 inches off the ground only. And just like that, straight legs. I might do 50 to 75 reps of that, one set, and that's the end of it. So I do 2 sets, 1 set of crunches, 1 set of leg lifts, and I'll do that like 4 times a week, whenever at the end of every workout. So when I'm done training, I go sit on the mat, I stretch, I do all my hurdler stretches and get all my, tension out of my lower back. I do my abs, and I'm done. I mean, that's easy.
Tractus Tillos, I'm not even going to try. Tips to lower triglycerides apart from fish oil.
Triglycerides really are not a very good indicator of anything. They're very variable. They really change according to the food you ate the night before you give blood. If you had a fatty steak or you ate a lot of sugar, you're going to see a higher triglyceride level. So I don't really go by triglycerides. I think HDLs, LDLs are a good modicum of what your cholesterol status is in your body. I think that's pretty good. Fasting blood sugar is important. That's important. To check on C-reactive protein, your total body inflammation is important to know that status. I'm not so big on triglycerides.
Let's go to Matty Cat Lifts. Your opinion on going to failure versus sets times reps.
Versus what?
Sets times reps.
Vary it. That's what I always say. I try to, on the heaviest, most intense set that I'm doing of an exercise, I will try to go to failure. I will try to push until I can't push anymore. And if I have a training partner there and they can push me through a few extra reps, great. If I have to do a drop set because I don't have a training partner there, I drop the weight, I go and do a few more reps, great. That's just intensifying the set that I'm doing. That's more than adequate, I think.
This seems like a simple question, but if you care to elaborate, maybe give your own experiences, Does gear mess with one's head?
You mean your thought processes?
Exactly, right.
Absolutely. The higher the androgen content, testosterones, trenbolones, anadrol, halotestin, they make you nuts because you shouldn't have androgen levels that high in your body. Your brain can't handle it. It's very conflicting. It makes you're thinking not rational, and it makes you like a nutcase. So some people control it better than others. I always found that I was good when I was eating, and in an off season when I was dieting, I was hungry. I wanted to like murder people. I was nuts because it just made me irritable. So the irritability, no matter whether you can take it or not, is really dependent on what you're doing in your life. If you have a stressful job, probably not the best idea to take heavy androgens like that.
Let's go to there was one about. There's another question about Big Ramy. Getting a lot of questions about Big Ramy. All right, Landon Welch. I'm thinking of competing in the future. However, I have type 1 diabetes. Are there any compounds you recommend to avoid with the diabetes?
I wouldn't be using fast-acting carbohydrate sources like high molecular weight carbs. It probably is going to be hard for you to measure how much enough insulin to take to figure out, how to manage that blood sugar increase, especially because it's happening so rapidly. If you can do it, then great. So I would avoid very simple sugary foods that raise blood sugar too quickly. Because if you're taking a food that raises blood sugar a little on the slower side, you can kind of sit down and figure, okay, I have this many grams of carbs, this many grams of protein, this many grams of fat. Okay, I need to take this much insulin, and it usually works out. It's only when you're eating like very high, molecular weight carbs, things that spike insulin release tremendously, that's when you run into trouble with blood sugar control.
Gary James, is muscle fiber nuclei overload even a thing?
Say it again.
Muscle fiber nuclei overload, is that a thing?
I don't even know what that means, to be honest with you. I know what muscle nuclei are, and I know that the more you build muscle, you produce new nuclei, which create the new cells and which fuse with the main muscle fibers, and you get new muscle, new muscle fascicles that will, cause the muscles to increase in size and girth. But I'm not really sure what he's asking. If that's what he was meant by the fact that training increases the muscle nuclei, to increase, which is basically what they're doing is these satellite cells or stem cells that surround all the mature muscle fibers. When we work out and break down muscle tissue, they activate these stem cells to become active, but they're immature. And they're like little blobs, essentially. And then what happens is they become differentiated into new muscle tissue. They incorporate themselves into the myofiber, and then they start responding to the stimuli. So that's the process of building muscle.
I think you've answered this question in the past, but let's dive into this one again. What would have happened in 2006 if Ronnie did not have the injuries, and then a secondary to that had trained with Dorian Yates?
I would have liked to seen the two of them train together because they both had. Ronnie has a very different style because Ronnie does lift heavy like Dorian did, but Ronnie has sloppy form, and Ronnie lifts, with tremendous volume too. So Ronnie does volume and he does heavy weights, whereas Dorian does very low volume heavy weights. So I don't think they would have had a good repertoire together as training partners, although they're both super crazy intense. We would have loved to seen it just because we want to see a big, huge Ronnie and a big, huge Dorian, battling it out, so to speak, in the gym.
Maddie Cat again, how much of your daily protein should come from food versus how much should come from supplements? I find it very difficult to reach protein requirements without at least 3 servings of whey isolate a day. Is that too much?
No, that's what whey is. I mean, whey isolate is a convenience. It's a supplement. It supplements your diet because you just can't get enough food in your diet. So you're using that as a tool rather than missing that meal, missing that protein serving. You're actually still giving it to your body, and you're giving your body what it needs so that it can help continue to repair and build muscle. Very smart move.
Bodybuilding, actually, I'm going to save this one to the end. Victor Simoes, do you think low doses of Masteron, like 200 mg a week, are a good strategy to control estrogen and prolactin on a test and DECA bulking cycle?
Hard to tell. I mean, everyone responds a little differently. So the best thing I can tell you to do is try it, get blood work, check your hormone levels, and then you'll know if it's working for you, because everyone does respond slightly different.
I can't find who asked this question, but somebody wants to know the best way to avoid a hernia while training.
There is no way, because you know what, a hernia just is a weakness in the muscular wall that, you know, surrounds the pelvic girdle and your abdominal cavity. So if you open up a little umbilical hernia because you had a weakness in your umbilicus when you were a baby, it could have been there for 20 years. It was the weakness, and all of a sudden you lean over, you squeeze a little too hard, and boom, it pops open. So you can't tell. There's no way to really avoid that. Just like, you know, if you have an inguinal hernia under your testicles, that's where the testicles drop. They start out in the abdominal cavity and they descend down and they go into the scrotum, into the sac, so to speak. You know, if you have a weakness and that hole where they travel through doesn't close up like it normally does in most people, you're going to have a weakness. You're going to get an inguinal hernia. Same thing with the femoral hernia or along the inner thighs. You know, some people just have a weakness in that wall. I think I got one from running. You know, I never actually got a hernia, but they said, you know, you might, you know, at some point in the future. Of course, they had to plant that thought in my head, like I really need to worry about anything else. But I never got one. It's just, you know, at least I was conscious of the fact that I could possibly get one. And a lot of people think it's something terrible when it happens because they've never had a hernia. But it's not like life-threatening by any means.
Time for a couple of more questions, but before we do that, I just got a notification, Dave, some bad news. You remember the movie Remember the Titans, right?
Yes.
The head coach, Herman Boone. So the real life Herman Boone passed away today at the age of 84.
Wow.
So, yeah, crazy.
Yeah.
Left side, strong side. Michael Graffio, is it, quote, important to lose muscle mass as we get older, approaching 60? So if we get the mechanisms behind losing muscle and I guess the, quote, importance as we get into older ages.
I don't think it's necessary if you have good health markers. In other words, if your heart is beating properly, your EKGs are good, your echocardiograms are good, your cardiac CTs are good, your blood work is good, you feel good, your blood pressure is good, your blood sugar is good, don't drop anything. Don't change anything. If, however, you're having problems, high blood pressure, because that's what happens when you hit your late mid-40s and early 50s. You get high blood pressure. All these things pop out of nowhere. All your genetic, you know, I guess you could say predispositions a lot of times rear their head around that age. Then you got to address it. If you have high blood pressure, you got to take a blood pressure medication, okay? If you have high blood sugar, you got to address that. You know, it is what it is. You can't hide from it. If you become ignorant to it, then you deserve anything negative that happens to you. And there's no reason for that. So just check yourself out. If you're fine, then don't worry about it. If you are a little high in certain areas and you need a blood pressure med or you need something like that, then you'll get on them. That's all the doctor will prescribe. There's nothing wrong with it.
We'll take one more question. Body by Johnny Law. One, he wants to know when you're going to bring your Diet Guru class to Los Angeles. And two, when are you going to come out with your own book?
Diet class to Los Angeles probably won't happen for another year or two because I still have very young kids and it's too hard to travel. So if you really want to, look, I have guys that make the pilgrimage from India, okay, Pakistan, Dubai, Australia. Flying across the country from California to Florida is not a big deal. I mean, the next course is Saturday, January 25th. We've already sold about 10 seats. So guys, don't wait. The winter course is always very popular here because all the people up north who are freezing the tuchuses off, they come down here to Florida. They make a little weekend out of it. They spend Saturday with me at the Guru course, and then Friday or Saturday, or Sunday they go and have a little fun in the sun and relax to get out of the cold weather. So that's going to be the next course, January 25th. You can sign up at DavePalumbo.com. Now, as far as when am I going to write a book? I keep saying I'm going to do it, and I keep having different ideas, and then I want to write a movie script, and I got so many things going through my head, and so little time, but I will do it. My dad, before he passed, he said to me, he goes, I know you're a good writer, because, I was a good writer, like my dad likes to credit. He's like, and you know what, don't feel pressure to write. He says, when the story needs to be written, it will write itself through you, and you'll just put it on paper. That's how he goes, I wrote. So I'm not putting pressure on the process. I know I have a couple books in me. I have a diet book for sure. I have a supplement book in my head. I have a spiritual enlightenment book in my head. and I want to write some movie scripts I have in my head. And some of them have been written already. I just have to perfect them. So I will get to that stage. I'm not there yet. Like I'm saying, I'm trying to get through, raising my young kids and have a few extra minutes to myself. But I will do it. I think I'm not ready to, because I think that once I have it perfected in my head, that I feel that, okay, this is so rock solid that anyone can read this book and can lose weight and can apply the principles here. And that's going to take time for me to sit down and really hash it out and iron it out. I will put the book out.
That's going to do for this episode of Ask Dave. A reminder right now at RxMuscle.com and the RxMuscle YouTube channel, Dave Palumbo and Sean Ray break down the 2019 Arnold Classic lineup, perhaps one of the deepest of this era. For Dave Palumbo and Tyler Shore, I'm Sadiq Faruqi. We'll see you next time.